You're watching News at Prime. Let's pick up on this conversation now. There are growing concerns over the continued rise in civilian deaths in Gaza. In the latest Israeli attacks, the Palestinian Health Ministry says about 50 civilians were killed in Israeli bombardments in the area of Khan Younis. The attacks come as the latest ceasefire talks have collapsed after Hamas walked out of them. Let's get more now on the latest developments, and I'm joined by Dr. Feroz Osman. He is from the Media Review Network. Dr. Osman, good evening to you, and thank you very much for your time. In your considered view, what collapsed the Qatar-US mediated talks?
You know, these talks that have been going on for the last 9 months, it is Hamas and the Palestinians that have agreed and remain flexible to negotiations and to a ceasefire. But it is, in fact, Israel that has continuously collapsed the talks. We know how they humiliated the United States President Biden very recently when he actually presented Netanyahu's own demands for a ceasefire, which was agreed upon by the Palestinians. Then it went to the United Nations Security Council, and that it is well known that the United States has been vetoing it, but the last one they agreed to and endorsed the negotiations for a ceasefire, but then Netanyahu dismissed it, insulted and embarrassed the president. So it is not Hamas that is collapsing these talks, but we know very well that Israel is not interested in a negotiated settlement, and its demands for a ceasefire is unreasonable, and that is the problem.
Yeah, you used the word flexible, and I'm going to use it in the inverse and say what you are saying is that it is Israel that are being inflexible. And let me ask it this way then, is that a fair assessment, given that Israel has a very, very tough job on its head, because it has to fight for the release of hostages, and these hostages, the people in Israel, the understanding is that they have been protesting against their own government for it to find a way for a ceasefire in order for those people to be released alive. So I'm basically asking the question, are you absolutely certain that it is Israel that is being inflexible? Is it possible that both sides are perhaps inflexible?
I think we have to understand what Israel is. It is a settler colonial entity that has usurped Palestinian territory for the last 76 years. It has imposed a siege on the Palestinian people, of course, assisted by the Western countries and the Arab neighbors around it, such as Egypt and Jordan, the Saudis, etc. So it is the Palestinians here that are the victims of an occupation that has been ongoing for 76 years. And if it is a settler colonial entity as Israel is, and we very well know we were victims ourselves of a settler colonial occupation in this country. You know, inherent in settler colonialism is a racism, that you are inherently racist and inherently violent. So the onus for a peace to come around in that area, it must be focused on Israel and not the Palestinians. All the Palestinians are asking for is freedom from occupation. So it is unfair for us to play a moral equivalent role here. One is an occupier, that is the entity known as Zionist Israel, and the other one are occupied people, and they are fighting for freedom, for self-determination. So let's not have moral equivalence here. You cannot say apartheid is and was correct for us, and they wanted to put us into Bantu stance, and we accepted that that inferior status. That is what Israel is asking the Palestinians to do. They don't want peace. What they want is pacifism, and the Palestinians are refusing to have that.
In your earlier response, you invoked the United States and the president of that country having been embarrassed. In your, again, in your considered view, as a person who follows this very closely, who do you think Israel is listening to right now? And I'm asking it in the context of, or in the context of a contest that is happening in the United States for power. There's about to be elections there. President Biden may or may not come back. So who, in your view, is Israel likely listening to right now?
Nobody, unfortunately. We know very well that South Africa has gone to the United Nations. The United Nations Security Council passed resolutions. We know that they've gone to the International Court of Justice, where they talked about a plausible genocide that is taking place. The ICC is under attack by the Israelis. Israel has violated and dismissed every and all United Nations and international laws, including the Geneva Conventions. It has been given a free rein for decades now, and unfortunately, the prime culprit for allowing this monster to be released on the world is the United States of America. Remember, United States of America, Australia, New Zealand are all settler colonial entities that exterminated the indigenous population. And this is exactly who Israel wants to emulate. They want the extermination of the Palestinians, and those Palestinians that choose to remain in occupied Palestine must be enslaved for them to continue dominating that region. So Israel, unfortunately, is not listening to the United Nations, is not obeying international law, and neither the Americans nor the Western countries have any leverage to tell Israel to do what it wants to. The only way forward, Koli, is for the international community to boycott and impose a sanctions against the Zionist entity.
Hopes of returning to the negotiating table between the warring parties. How soon do you think that could happen? And is it possible that it might still be the same mediators, Qatar and the United States?
There is unfortunately no alternative. Biden is terribly worried at the moment that he's going to lose the elections and Trump will come in, but Israel is not handing him any kudos for him to be able to do that. They're probably hoping for Trump, and we know that the right-wingers have been, Trump himself has been very supportive of Israel in going against international law and recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. So the leverage that the world has on Israel is absolutely minimal. And I think the United States, Biden in particular, has the leverage to stop it. But he provided thousands of 2,000 pound bombs to continue the genocide that Israel is imposing on Palestine. So there is very bleak opportunism for a ceasefire to take place until and unless Israel is hauled before the World Court and charged for the crime of genocide.
Final question to you, Dr. Osman. The situation on the ground in Gaza, and I want to be specific to the southern area of Rafah. That area was described to have been the last refuge for the people, the more than 1 million people that are still there. How do you think those people are coping with the latest renewed fighting there?
The resilience of the Palestinian is simply astonishing. How is it people that can go on for 9 months, 284 days now, being pulverized to this extent, and we watch it with really painful hearts, bleeding tears every day. There has never been a genocide that has been recorded like this ever in the history of mankind, and yet they resist. So this is a people who are really fighting for their dignity and are willing to sacrifice their lives and say that we'd rather die with dignity than to remain enslaved and subservient to an occupying power for the rest of our lives. So it is a remarkable feat that the Palestinians, their bravery and their resilience in the face of this, and I can just imagine how horrendous the situation is, but I can only admire and say this is simply a divine power that is helping them resist such an occupation.
Dr. Feroz, Osman, let me thank you very much for your time.